Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast, or maybe I should call it the Bad Idea Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, or even if you heard the intro music to our normal just audio podcast, you notice there's glitching and whatnot. Well, yeah, Bad Idea has taken over, and we're going to be doing Bad Idea Sundays here on the Comic Source Podcast. They're so big and they're so huge and they're so powerful, and we've all done our part to serve the button in the past. And maybe that's why they're allowing me to still kind of have the reins here as Bad Idea Hello sort of takes over the Comic Source Podcast on Sundays. So obviously the launch day this last Wednesday was huge. We had people camping out overnight so they could get that button as one of the first to pick up the Bad Idea comic. We saw comics going on eBay for huge prices and buttons for even a higher price than that. And I do want to remind everybody that, so if you got the first printing with the white title, that's great. If you weren't able to get one of those, you can get what's called not a first printing. So any subsequent printing is just not a first printing. There's not second printing, third printing, fourth printing, whatever. Everything that's not the first printing is just not the first printing. But these books are always going to be available, or at least for a very extended period of time. So right now, as we're recording this and as you're listening to this, these books are available as not a first printing, and your Bad Idea retailer has to sell them for cover price. That's the whole point of wanting these retailers to follow the rules. We want the comics in the hands of as many readers as possible. That's why it's limited to one per copy. We don't want people hoarding them, it's just the idea that everybody can get a chance. Everybody who wants to read it can get the book and read it. So I've seen people paying over cover price on eBay and whatnot, Facebook, for not a first print. Don't do that. Don't. Just find a Bad Idea retailer. Even if they don't have any in stock, they can reorder, and they have to sell it to you for cover price. So please don't be paying more than cover price. So I thought it was a successful launch day. There were obviously some growing pains. I've heard from a huge number of people on the positive. I have heard from a few people on the negative side, and we're going to address some of that as well. And in fact, next week, we're hoping to have Dinesh and Warren Simons on, Dinesh Shamdasani and Warren Simons on to talk about that, talk about how they felt launch day went, and address some of the concerns people are having. I think there's a perception that's not necessarily true that has more to do with logistics and launching a smaller publisher in the pandemic and things like that. And I know it rubs some people the wrong way, and it's kind of unfortunate, especially with the allocations that occurred. But I think overall it was successful. There was a lot of buzz, a lot of people talking about it. I certainly had a lot of fun. It was, I got out of the house and went on a bit of an adventure to get my button that you can see, I guess right here. Am I pointing the right this way? Right here, this button. So anyway, we'll start with you, Rocky. I know you weren't necessarily that familiar with Bad Idea. So when did you first hear about it? Was it Wednesday? Did you start hearing spec? What scuttlebutt did you hear?
Well, I heard, I actually did hear about it, but I forgot I heard about it. And I heard about it from you I think it was well over a month ago. And then I just forgot. And then all of a sudden I saw you tweeting something about it. And then I happened to pick up my comics, and my retailer had never had anything. I'm up here in Alberta, Canada, and my retailer is not part of the 154 retailer outlets that had it. And yeah, then I just heard, I remember reading, I did go to the website, and I love all the story ideas. I think there's I just love the story ideas. It's really good. And I'm really impressed, and we'll be talking about it, but I'm excited. And so aside from the retailer aspect of it that you guys will probably talk more about and know more about, I just love it because this is a really good story, and this might be Bad Idea, but these stories are pretty good.
Now, I know that I had provided you with a contact over at Bad Idea. Do you know, has your retailer reached out? Are they going to try to sign up?
My retailer is he just contacted me this morning, and he said he's going to look into it. He's got so I'm hopeful of that. I'm really he kind of likes the idea, and he's in the middle right now of streamlining a number of things through the big two and into various independent lines. So I'm really hoping that he will. I'm going to talk more with him probably later next week, but I'm certainly hopeful he will.
Right on. What about you, Jesse? How was it for you on Wednesday? I know you didn't have a retailer close to you, so you ended up having to travel quite a ways. So what was Wednesday like for you?
Well, Wednesday for me was the culmination of a long process. You know, I've had skin in the game for a very long time on this. I've heard about Bad Idea like a long time ago. And so I've been tracking, you know, COVID threw us off for a bit. There's a number of things that, you know, the world changed, but, you know, here it is, right? So as we got closer, it was kind of interesting because I had already reached out to Paradise in you know, Southern California and pre-ordered a set well over a year ago. I'd reached out to Midtown Comics in New York City, so I knew I had secured issues. We have Third Eye Comics up here in Maryland. I was able to you know, get up there. So you know, it's pretty exciting the way it's set up, and it's also good, as you previously discussed, to see a unique and different approach on how that these are going to be sold and distributed. And I'm also interested in, you know, in how that they're holding people accountable, because as we've seen this past week, I believe they issued a permanent ban on at least one retailer, which makes sense because that really kind of throws the gauntlet down and says, hey guys, we're not playing here, we're serious. And that, of course, gives additional press, additional interest in it. People, you know, they're like, oh, wow, this is different, this is new. So I'm very excited. It's been a very amazing week.
Yeah, and just to kind of, before we start talking about the issue itself, because that's really what we want to do. You know, there's been so much press and talk about what Bad Idea is, and like I said, people thinking they're trying to manipulate the market. Not enough people talking about the book, so I do want to get there. But just to kind of follow up on what Jesse was saying, yeah, it was a retailer here in Phoenix that broke rule number 2, which says you cannot sell the book for more than cover price for 30 days until 30 days after the release date. And there was a retailer here that put up on Facebook, hey, I have 12 copies. I think he put them up for $125, and at the time on eBay they were going for more than that. And they said, hey, it's less than on eBay. I have 12 copies, you know, $125. That's not what Bad Idea is about. I know people feel like, hey, they're trying to manipulate the market and make this book hotter than it is because of the allocations. That's not the case. What happened basically is these books got printed last year. And in the midst of the pandemic, and who knew what the market was going to be like when they had to push their release back. That allowed them to open up because it was 100 stores originally. That allowed them to take more stores that were interested. They got it to 154 retail partners, like Rocky said. So yeah, then when it came time to actually put the books out, and they even went to those retailers and said, hey, we're not going to have enough books. We just, the original print run, we didn't realize what the demand was going to be. We can't go back and do more. Does anybody want to reduce their orders? And graciously, some retailers did reduce their orders, but it wasn't enough to close the gap because they'd added those other retailers. So, you know, whether you think that was a mistake or not, I don't think it was on purpose. It wasn't malicious. Bad Idea certainly did not want to reduce the initial orders and allocate them down to 51%. But the other thing they did is they did say, hey, we can fill the other half of your order with the not first print. So again, the idea of only selling it for cover price and the idea of only one per customer is so that you get this book in the hands of as many readers as possible. The reason that they're not collecting them and they're not doing them in trade is this is a partnership with these retailers. This is to help out the local comic shops, to drive people into the comic shops, to get these books. Obviously there's excitement about them. Obviously people want them. If you can only get them in a comic shop, you've got to go into a comic shop to get them. And that helps out. If they're available in trade, where do people buy their trades? Oh, let me just go to Amazon and have it shipped directly to my house. That's not helping out the comic retailer. If you put out digital copies where you can get it from Comixology or what have you, then those inevitably get pirated and shared, and then people are not buying the comics at all. Again, that does not help the retailer. This is an idea of bringing back both the collectability of comics, because there is that subsection that wants to collect and likes the whole idea of, a hot book and doing a little research, putting a little legwork, going on a little bit of adventure, putting out some effort. And it is effort for a comic shop to do this. They've cut out Diamond. They've cut out the middleman. You deal directly with Bad Idea. You do have to follow the rules, or you will get a lifetime ban. And it is a little bit of work for the retailer, but I think it's worth it in the long run because it drives people into your shop. It's the only place you can get it. They did come out and say, whatever you ordered on number 1, you have to order that for the subsequent issues of the series. So if you ordered, 50 copies, you have to order 50 of number 2, 50 of number 3, and so on and so forth. And that's, again, to stop this rampant, hey, everybody wants to buy the number 1, and then nobody cares about the subsequent issues. So the shop that my local comic shop here, if you bought number 1, you agreed to buy 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I was going to buy them anyway, but again, I think that's a great idea because it's not just people showing up to buy issue 1 and then you don't see them again. Even if you go to a different, like if in your area, your local comic shop is not a partner store, but you go to a different shop so that, they are carrying it and you want to get it. And now you've committed to go back to that shop. You're helping out another retailer. So I understand people saying, hey, they were manipulating the market and whatever. They had no idea. Launching a new comic book publishing company with COVID going on and in a very crowded marketplace is a very sketchy proposition. And I think there's a lot of retailers, a new comic book publisher comes along, they might order a copy of number 1, maybe a couple copies, right? But not to this level. So I don't blame Bad Idea for not having a giant print run. That would have defeated the whole purpose. The whole idea was to make these collectible, and I guarantee you they wish they could have doubled their initial print run if they had the opportunity to go back and do it, but they didn't. So, and again, hoping to have Dinesh on and Warren to talk about those kind of things and how launch day was for them next week. So anyway, let's get to the book itself. Rocky, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but give us your initial thoughts. Like, did you have any idea what the story was about and what was your initial reaction after reading it?
I remember reading just the advertisement of the story, and it just the concept is pretty cool. And the whole idea that, going back to World War II, we actually had a computer, the Allies had a computer in World War II that was responsible for dropping the second bomb on Nagasaki. And because Americans never planned on dropping 2 bombs, they only planned on dropping 1. But it was a computer that manipulated events to drop the second. And the computer has been shut down, but now it's become active again all these decades later. I mean, that's it. That's really the premise. And I think that's cool. I just like that. It's cool. And writer Matt, I'm going to say his last name wrong. How do you say his last name? Kint?
Yeah. Kint. Matt Kint. Yeah.
Matt Kint.
Yep.
I mean, he's one of those writers where I've read a lot from Matt Kint, and I've never been able to say his last name properly until probably now. And the artist by Doug Brathwaite does a good job in the art. Diego Rodriguez on the colors. I like the whole thing. Even Dave Sharp on the letter. I just listened to an interview with Dave Sharp on another YouTube channel the other day, and he mentioned this, and I really, really like this story. The two sort of special agents in this story are Olivia Fletcher and Allison Falk, and it's kind of interesting that they're very good at what they do. They seem to be sort of like the typical best of the best, and they're recruited, of course, by the highest echelons of the I'm assuming the CIA, and they're meeting in the desert naked because they can't have anything electronic on them. I mean, this was really set up cinematically. I mean, I've been using that word a lot lately for a lot of great books because I think that's one thing that comic books were always good at. I think the movies benefited from comic books because they took the story and the structure from comic books, and that's why I think movies have gotten better. But I think comic books now have sort of grabbed from the movies some cinematic feel to it, and even this started off like a James Bond epic. It showed that these two secret agents, Fletcher and Falk, sort of take out this sort of Russian diplomat, and then all of a sudden you have the big ENIAC, the intro followed them meeting in the desert, stark naked, and being given them, and then being basically told by their boss, CIA boss, exactly that now they got to take out and find this ENIAC. This was just I really enjoyed this. I mean, it was a lot of pages. I think, how many pages is this? It was actually 48 pages long, or pardon me, 40 pages long.
Yep.
And,
yeah, backup as well.
Yeah, backup. And wow, I gotta tell you, it's like the moral of the story is once the bell is rung, it cannot be unrung. You know, when he talked to ENIAC, you know, when that Ned, that computer programmer named Ned was programming ENIAC, and ENIAC warned him, don't, once I ring the bell, once you give me something to do and you give me enough information, you can't unring that bell. And of course he's under pressure by the US government to win the war. And then boom. A question that I have is, what was the question that they asked ENIAC? Because, that to me is everything. If you ask ENIAC, a computer, how do you end war? Well, a legitimate answer could be kill all the humans because we cause all the war. So What question did they put to ENIAC? That's the question I have. You got to be very careful what you ask. I mean, if you don't just tell a computer to solve the problem, just find out what the answer is first before you authorize the computer to solve the problem. I mean, you can really see the danger of what they did. And I'm actually excited. I would love to see this as a Netflix show.
There's the lawyer in you, right? Don't they always teach you lawyers don't ask a witness a question unless you know what the answer is?
That is exactly right. I mean, anybody with a brain would know. You don't give somebody all the power and all the, you don't give somebody the power to answer the question and implement whatever solution they want. Good grief.
Yeah. All right, Jesse, what about you? What are your thoughts on ENIAC?
All right, well, we'll start on a couple things here. One is the art team, okay? So yeah, you're looking at not just the art team, but the creative team. So this team, every single person that worked on this book has worked with Dinesh in the past. All right, they were handpicked by Warren and Dinesh years ago to build the Valiant universe, and they produced some of the best stuff that Valiant had at the time. So you've got a really all-star team coming here, and they really brought their A game on this. I've seen probably about 6 or 7 reviews online on YouTube on this book specifically, and every single one of them has said this is top-notch, top shelf stuff. And they're right. The story is good. The art is good. The colors are good. The presentation is good. The quality of the materials is good. So this is everything that we were hoping for coming out of a new publisher, and it really met expectations. I can tell you that I thought it was pretty interesting cinematically, as was just stated a moment ago. This could easily be a movie. And let's make no mistake here. I know that Dinesh has said that, and he'll probably say again next week, that they're here to make good quality stories, good quality books, but let's not mince words. They're going to try to make movies at some point too, and this will translate very well over to the screen, and it is. You've got a progressive story with 2 female protagonists. That's not very common. That's awesome. I like it. I mean, and it felt organic. It felt real. I'm interested. I'm captivated by the story already. We're telling an alternate history of American and world history, and how this could have blended into the events that we know, but also with a background that we don't know. There's the cold probability of the mechanical and evil computer that basically it's not necessarily evil. It's saying, hey, 1 bomb equals this probability, 2 bombs equals this probability, and it takes the humanity out of war in a sense. But it also looks at the bigger picture. Overall, this is kind of like the Ultron story that we wish we'd have got, mixed with, James Bond and a little bit of Jason Bourne. I'm very excited to see where it goes, and I'll be along for the ride.
Yeah, you guys both make a couple of great points, and I do want to ask Matt, whenever we have him on, about deciding to go with 2 female protagonists, because that's interesting. But the cool thing about it is it doesn't feel like it's tokenism or just diversities for diversity's sake. Like Rocky said, these 2 appear to be the best of the best. They appear very capable. That's kind of what that opening sequence is about. So, that was great. Seeing the history of ENIAC, and you can see so many times along the way, especially with the programmer Ned, who you would almost call him the father of ENIAC. He clearly almost cares about this machine the way somebody would care about their child. He's so dedicated. But so many times along the way where they could have stopped it, but it was always, hey, let's end the war. Do we sure want to do this? And the fact that ENIAC itself warns Ned, like, are you sure this is the path you want to go down? Because like Rocky said, you can't unring that bell. And so when you start talking about this story in specifics, it's action packed, it's well paced, it's an interesting concept. Maybe not the most original concept, a computer or some kind of technology gaining sentience, and maybe deciding that, hey, you want to end all war, like Rocky said, get rid of all the humans, right? Like what's the best way to protect mankind? If you want to talk about iRobot, that Will Smith movie, it's for the computers and robots to make all the decisions and kind of protect humanity from their own destructive tendencies. So it's not, this brand new idea that's never been explored before, but it is an interesting idea to explore because you put it in this beautiful package with incredible line work and great colors and great dialogue and well paced. And you can enjoy it for what it is, a really entertaining comic. But if you sit back and think about it, if you want to put more of yourself into it, it's that age-old question of humanity. It's our curiosity and our ability to answer questions and rise to challenges. And so often we ask ourselves, can we do this? Is it possible for us to do this? Can we build an atomic bomb? Can we split an atom? Can we find a way to release all that energy? Without ever stopping to think about, should we do this? Right? Let's extrapolate this out to its worst possible conclusion. Let's think of the glass as not just half empty, but completely empty. Worst case scenario, how can this technology, how can this discovery, how can whatever scientific breakthrough you're working toward, how can it turn out poorly for mankind if you take it to its worst possible conclusion? And so often we never bother to ask ourselves those questions. It doesn't seem that we have that in us as a species. So often, as I said, we just stop at, can we do this? Could we do this? Instead of should we? And that to me is the underlying question that's present here in ENIAC. And it's such an interesting one. And when we talk about the stories and the consequences, you can see throughout the narrative as the stakes are raised. I mentioned ENIAC going to Ned saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And, the military complex, forget, about the human aspect of it. Guys like Ned, who eventually takes the blame for the second bomb being dropped. But, you take the human part out of it and you start thinking of the military industrial complex as this faceless entity and them deciding, well, it was successful in ending the war. So what else could it do for us? Right? Thinking of it as a tool rather than something that has the ability to affect change on its own. Like Rocky just said a little while ago, you're asking this entity a question that not only does it have the answer, but it has the ability to implement that answer. And so they decide to feed all the knowledge of the world into this computer, which can already, even, back in the 50s when that happened, had the ability to think and to do more calculations per second than a human brain could do. And then we see the stakes and American military having to turn against itself to try to contain ENIAC. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned is the fact that, so then once you realize ENIAC is kind of out of control, they create sort of this anti-ENIAC organization to try to control it. And they call it CANE, which is ENIAC spelled backwards, which, ENIAC, another thing we haven't mentioned, this was a real thing, this was a real computer system that they used during the Second World War. So I don't know if, and Matt Kent has done interviews and he's talked about how he was always fascinated by it. And so, this is an alternate history and like a what if when you start thinking about it. But the other part of it is, did he know right away that that's another thing I want to ask him. Did you realize right away that ENIAC spelled backwards was Kane? Because that's such an interesting thing to think about as well, and a great idea to come up for the anti-ENIAC to call it Kane. And as I said, ENIAC, it is a real thing. It stands for Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. So that spells ENIAC and then backwards spells Kane. So yeah, little tidbits like that, like ENIAC backwards is Kane, and that's the anti-ENIAC organization. Like all of that, I just feel adds to sort of the coolness factor, if you will, of the story. So yeah, I thought it was pitch perfect. And this is the thing that I want to get out there is we hear all these people talking about and unhappy about the way launch day went. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, and I don't want to, tell anybody that their opinion is wrong. But I do feel like there's a certain section of people that are complaining about it. It feels a little like sour grapes to me, like they weren't able to get their hands on it, so that's why they're mad. But I just don't think anybody should be bad-mouthing the book itself or the creators, because I think it is done so well. It's such a great story, and I want everybody to read it. And that's what Bad Idea wants. That's the whole idea of one copy per customer. Don't sell it more than cover price. We want this book out in the hands of people who are comic fans. So I thought it was spectacular. And while I was talking, we lost Rocky, so hopefully he'll be jumping back in soon. And actually, Manny's going to be joining us too. So what else do you have to mention? Anything about the backup story, Jesse?
I think it was cool. One of the things I want to talk about here about the backup story, but about the book in general. All right. There's a couple of types of people you're going to find on the internet. There's people that believe you should CGC something and put it on a shelf. There's people that believe that things should never be encased in plastic and comics are meant to be read. Well, I'm a bit of both. So I don't have $4,000. Well, I do, but I don't have $4,000 right now to go out and pick up a copy of, the Hero Trade 1 on eBay right now. I just don't have the appetite for that. There's too much Ethereum and Bitcoin out there for me to get. So, but there it is. I don't need to, because Bad Ideas put it in ENIAC 1. So I was able to read it and enjoy the story for what it is, and pretty much anybody that picks up a copy. And I don't have to go out and spend $150 on a first print of ENIAC 1 to read it, because I can go get it for cover price. So now we have a situation where the collectors, like myself, are going to be happy, and the readers are going to be happy. And when you look at it that way, Bad Idea shouldn't be rubbing anybody wrong. They're doing the right thing. They're catering to two markets, and they're two markets that historically have not been, have had their needs met at the exact same time. This is brilliant. They're doing exactly what a publisher should do. And again, these guys, they've started the publisher once. They watched it rise. They watched where it led to, and here they are now. They've had a lot of lessons learned from that. I found it very exciting, and I really don't think that people out there have a whole lot to complain about. They really don't. If they want to read the books, they can read the books. They can enjoy the books. If they want to collect them, hey man, that's entirely possible too.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I did have a few people reach out to me and say, yeah, it sucks that I can't get the books. I just want to read them. And I pointed out to them, I said, okay, well, the not first print is out there, and you can read it that way. Well, no, I just think I'm going to wait for the trade. And I said, well, there isn't going to be a trade. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just wait until all of them are out, and I'll get whatever printing is out. And I said, okay, that's perfectly valid. But before you were complaining, saying you didn't care what print you got, you just wanted to read them. And then I pointed out the not first print is out there right now, open order item. And then all of a sudden your story changed. You just said all you care about is reading it, So again, I have to go back to that feeling of it. It just seems like for some people, it's kind of sour grapes. Like you didn't get it, and because maybe you didn't pre-order it. I only heard of a couple stores that didn't have any copies available at all, where all 51% of their allocated order went to pre-orders. I think most stores had a few copies, and yeah, it stinks if you didn't get there, early enough in the day. Maybe you had to work or whatever, and you couldn't be there at 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock when your store opened, and they only had 2 or 3 copies for the shelf. I get it, and again, I think Bad Idea understands that too. And they weren't real happy that they had to allocate the orders. They wanted to give everybody the amount that they ordered, but it just wasn't possible. So they did the fairest thing and cut it equally across the board, and everybody got 50% of what they ordered. But they filled the rest of those with not first prints, and it's the same. It's the same book. So if you just want to read it, as everybody is saying, then you certainly had the opportunity to do that. And here's the other part of it that we haven't mentioned. So with each, now that they've gotten one book out, right? They've proven it can be done, and more people know their name. Retailers that weren't aware before, whatever, because of the buzz on launch day and what was happening on social media, more retailers are aware, more comic fans are aware. So the orders on subsequent books are going to go up. These books haven't necessarily been printed yet, the way ENIAC #1 was printed, last year. So it's going to be easy going forward. It's going to be easier to get the books, and it's going to be easier to get a first printing of the books. So, I'm sorry if you didn't get a first printing of ENIAC #1, but I think if you want a first printing of ENIAC #2, that's going to be easier to get than this one was. If you want a first printing of their next series, Tankers #1, that's going to be easier to get. So, again, I understand, especially the way the collector mentality is, that you want a first printing. But if you didn't, then hey, man, get a second printing or a not first print of ENIAC #1, and then be sure you're on top of it with your retailer for the next issue of ENIAC or the next series that comes out. My understanding is they're going to be doing these gold buttons for each series, and so I camped out for a couple hours, 3 hours or so before my shop opened in order to get my button. And I'm telling you right now, there's no way that camping out 3 hours ahead of time for Tankers #1 would get me a button. Somebody's going to be there early. They're going to, oh, well, somebody was here 3 hours. Now I better get there 4 hours or 5. There's going to be that creep. So again, it's fun. And you don't need the button. The button didn't make me enjoy the issue any more than I would have otherwise. Dinesh and Bad Idea have said on social media that there is a purpose for the button. And you really, really want to get your hands on one, but they haven't told us what it is yet. So who knows if it ends up being, worth more than people are selling. I mean, they're selling online for hundreds of dollars. So and at this point, we just don't know if they're going to be, worth that. So anyway, it looks like Manny has joined us. So hopefully Rocky is still trying to get in. I have a feeling that the button, the Bad Idea button that we had to push 1 billion times is causing problems. As you know, they did take us over. So that's the only thing I can point out why we're having technical difficulties. But anyway, Manny, just to get you caught up on what we've talked about so far. Oh, look, here comes Rocky now. So so we talked about our initial reactions and what we heard about launch day. And then we talked about the book. So give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts on launch day. What did you see? What did you hear? Did you get to participate at all? What was your Bad Idea launch day experience like?
Mine in particular was a little weird because I thought I had secured a book via another shop, and then I just never heard back. So my fault though, also for not pre-ordering. I get so busy doing XYZ that sometimes things like that skip my mind. Luckily for me, I have a pretty good friend of mine who let me in on the fact that there's 2 shops in Merced that had the books. So the next day, I went over to Red Sky Comics, and shout out to them because that's the shop that I'm probably going to be going back to for all my comic book needs in the future.
That's a great shop. When I lived in California, that was my shop. So did you get a first print or a not first print?
No, I got a not first print. And, I didn't pre-order. I didn't do my homework enough. So am I a little bummed about it? Yeah. But at the same time, I'm in it for the story. I'm in it to support the guys over at Bad Idea. It's not a big deal to me. Some people got greedy and got 2 buttons, and
hey, don't talk about that. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
And now they're trying to flip one, and it goes against everything I stand for in comics. I mean, I know a guy who's even starting to slab books, and who swore he wouldn't do things like that. And I don't know
what a terrible person.
That secondary market all of a sudden is hitting somebody I know very, very hard, and he's traveling to store, making sure that he can get as many first prints as possible. And the funniest story I heard though was somebody was paying different people to go in and buy first prints.
Wow.
That was the funniest one I heard. But I get it. It's kind of a big deal because it's a very different thing that's happening in comics. You don't see things like this happen in comics. So yeah, it's great that it causes buzz. I described it to somebody as Bad Idea's launch day was a Kardashian day because it had good publicity and bad publicity. But at the end of the day, all publicity is good. So, and then, but once you open the pages of the comic book, fantastic story. So we all win.
Yeah. And welcome back, Rocky. I guess bad idea button taking over our podcast has been causing some technical issues.
Yeah.
So we'll blame that's who we're going to blame it on. But yeah, while you were gone, we just were kind of talking about how amazing the story is and how brilliant it was that Matt Cain, the anti-ENIAC organization is called Cain, and the whole idea of, you know, humanity asking, should you or can we do something? Could we do something rather than should we do something? So I have a hard time, and Manny's right. You know, the whole idea of the book is good, and maybe some people had sour grapes because they couldn't get their hands on a first printing or even a not first print. That's kind of what it feels like to me. Oh, bad idea, limited this on purpose. The whole point, and I've said this before, the whole point of going one per customer and not wanting retailers to sell it for overcover price is to get the book in as many hands of people who want to read it or collect it as possible. And when you read something or collect something, you only need one copy. You only need one copy of ENIAC #1 to say, I have collected ENIAC #1. You only need one copy of ENIAC #1 to read the story. So the whole idea is get it in the hands of as many people as possible. And I promise you, they wish they could have doubled their order, but it just wasn't possible. They didn't allocate on purpose. But what I was saying right before you two guys got back on was that going forward, these books are going to be easier to get. With all the publicity that came out on Wednesday, ENIAC #2 is going to be easier to get. Tankers #1, their next #1 is going to be easier to get. The orders have gone up. You know, the print runs are going to go up, and these titles are going to be easier to find. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen on the next time, you know, the next issue of ENIAC, and also on Tankers #1. Is anybody planning on camping out for a button next time, Manny?
Maybe. I might reach out to Red Sky and see how early the first person got there. And I do have the luxury of being able to take some time off if necessary. But I mean, at the end of the day, do you have my book? Yeah, that might be good enough for me. So,
what about you, Rocky? Would you camp out for a button?
You know what? I don't think I maybe I would. To be honest with you, I've always been very, very spoiled because my retailer and I are, well, you know, he's a good friend of mine, so I probably wouldn't have to camp out. But then if that was one of the rules that he couldn't,
yeah, it is
that he can't do that, then I probably would, because my retailer is pretty good at. He's kind of a stickler. Even like he doesn't even like giving me my comics ahead of time at times because he's afraid because of the point of date purchase and everything else. And
yeah, it's definitely one of the rules. The button, for those not familiar, the button goes to the first person to pick up the comic on Wednesday morning. So even if you prepaid ahead of time, doesn't matter. It's the first person that has paid for the book that picks it up on Wednesday morning gets the button. And you know, we've already seen, like Jesse alluded to, a retailer get a lifetime ban for breaking the rules. So I'm sure you, Rocky, wouldn't want to be responsible for your retailer having a lifetime ban. Bad idea comics. What about you, Jesse? Any plans or any desire to camp out for a button? I know you must want to get your hands on one.
Of course, but I don't trust a human being on this planet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure with a safety net as well. And I have ways within ways, right? But I can tell you this, I will go and I will be out there before opening, and I will be more hardcore than anybody could possibly imagine to do it the right way. Hey, I camped out for Star Wars re-release with a girlfriend with Princess Leia buttons. Trust me, I'm all in.
I did 16 hours at Comic-Con for something that I didn't get into. So lawn chair, a Nintendo Switch, a book.
Yep, let's go. Need to take a day off. I mean, I'm out here in Phoenix, so it's not that hard for me to camp out. I'm planning on getting there much earlier than 3 hours ahead of time, because the guy behind me in line, who was second, who showed up about an hour, almost 2 hours after I did, and I didn't know why he was there, because remember on the Bad Idea launch day also happened to have Berserker, also from Matt Kent, and then also the Noctera book from Scott Snyder and Tony Daniel. So I wasn't sure what this guy might be there for. It's pretty rare. I mean, usually people show up 5 minutes before the store opens at most. So I was kind of sitting there for a while. I was working on some stuff on my laptop, and then I asked him. I said, "Oh, you pretty big comic fan to be here, an hour before it opens." He goes, "Yeah, I love Valiant when Valiant relaunched." And so as soon as he said that, I knew he was there for the button. And then he said, "What about you?" I said, "Yeah, I know Dinesh and the guys and whatever." And so then he knew too that the button was not going to be his. So I expect him to be there much earlier this time. So I'll probably have to get there maybe an hour earlier than I did. Or I might just say, you know what, I already got a button. But the cool thing, I mean, the next one's going to have the number one. It's going to say tankers on it. It's just, they've got us wrapped up in that mentality. You want them all.
So what do you get though? So you get all the buttons and you get what, a secret prize at the end, or?
Yeah. They haven't said. They haven't
put
said.
them on a gauntlet.
All they've said is you really, in all caps, you really want to get your hands on one of these buttons. We can't tell you why yet. So I don't know. Maybe you get a page of original art. I
have a feeling that they have no idea what the prize is yet.
No, I wouldn't say that. I have a feeling Dinesh at least has some ideas. I wouldn't be surprised if if they put you in a future Bad Idea story, like you get to show up as a character, or at least in the background or something like that. It'll be something cool and it'll be something unique, for sure.
My suspicion, I think that I could easily see it being a redeemable token for something down the road that is exceptionally difficult to get your hands on.
Yep.
Kind of as a reward for those early hardcore fans that that supported all along and came in day one on game day.
Yep, I agree with that. So,
but how fun is it though? Let's talk about that. DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, Image, they're not doing anything like this. So something to rile up their fans in a sometimes frustrating, but it's caused a ruckus and something nobody else is doing, and it's a lot of, and at the end of the day it is fun, and it also helped that the book was really good and the creative team is one that we know very well. So all in all, kudos for their bad ideas.
Yeah, I did have somebody that reached out to me that said the thing they have a problem with is a publisher releasing a physical only book while we're still dealing with a global pandemic. And I can't argue that. The pandemic is still here. It's not, here's the thing, right? We all know that in the US it's still a thing, and in other parts of the world it's much less so. They've taken care of it much better than we have here. But the fact of the matter is that this was mostly a North American release. So certainly everybody in line at the stores I was at, well, the first store I went to, there was probably maybe 6 or 8 people in line. Everybody had a mask. You can't get into the store without a mask. The second place, there was only 2 of us. And again, we both had masks on. You can't get in the store without a mask. And that store, you can't even get in with like just the gaiter or a face shield or the mask with the valves. Like it has to be a specific cloth mask fitted very tightly to your face. He's the owner there is a real stickler, and more power to him. I'm all for it, But I do get the point. You are encouraging people to go out who might not otherwise. But man, they already pushed the release back once, and certainly everybody has to make that decision on their own if you want to go out or not. Technically risking getting sick, and it could be bad for some people. But if you take all the precautions, you wear a mask or 2 masks. It's been shown that you're going to be pretty safe. So, but I do understand that, and I get it. That is a valid point. I can't say that it's not. But I look forward to putting all this behind us and being able to just have that excitement like Manny talks about. Like I had a lot of fun on Wednesday, going, and even though it was kind of boring to sit out there for a couple hours, I had my laptop, I was working on podcast stuff, and then as soon as I left that shop, I went to another shop that opened an hour later, and hey, there was nobody in line there. So, but it was an adventure, it was fun to go out and, go to a different shop. And the second shop I went to is a shop that I really like. It's an hour from my house. I drive an hour south to get to my shop. And then if I want to go to another shop, it's another, 30 minutes. Or I should say that my shop's 30 minutes from my house and that other shop's another 30 minutes. So it's a full hour. So, but it was an adventure to get out and to, talk to other comic fans, even though we were all wearing masks, and talk about what we like and just feel like you're a part of something. That hasn't happened in a long time, especially without cons. So Yeah, you make a really good point, Manny. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the story, Manny? You didn't get a chance to kind of dig into it at all.
No, I was surprised at how not complicated it was. It's very, very simple and yet very interesting and got me hooked. It it really gave me vibes of what Valiant used to be, and I know why exactly. Well, duh, it's the same, it's the same creative mind. So, but now it's with the original characters, and I thought it was great. I'm very happy to see this team working together again. And then to also comment on what you were saying, uh, it's also not Bad Idea's fault that there was a pandemic last year,
Yeah.
because they were supposed to release this,
A year ago.
this time last year,
Yeah.
but it did not work out because everybody shut down. Companies are they have to chug along, and if this is as long as they thought that they could possibly wait for the release, they also got to do what they got to do. We're all adults. We all make our own decisions. And if you want to go out and get yourself an ENIAC book or any other book for that matter, it be safe, but at the same time, you gotta keep on living. You gotta, if you start taking away those little things that you enjoy, then yeah, you probably will start having all kinds of anxiety and depression. But things like this are, it helps just because it keeps your mind off of things. All of a sudden, you're very, very entangled in the web of people's bad idea stories about throughout the day, people getting copies, you getting your copy, making sure it's secure. And once you have it, it's a physical copy, it's an accomplishment. And it's so many years since its inception already. Well, not that long, but it seems like it, at least.
Yeah.
Especially as we were pushing the stupid button on our laptops and and things like that. So it's an accomplishment, and it's great. It feels good and it's fun, and yeah, we get it. We are in the 3/4 of the way through a pandemic, but
Well, what's going to save it though, I think, is because 153 outlets is not very much. I mean, that's not a lot at all. But what, to their credit, there's a lot of excitement, and so it's going to be really interesting to see. I find it ironic that a lot of what they've done is sort of like flipping the bird to some of the high spec market. But at the same time, it's going to be the spec market that is going to drive more and more retailers to call Big Idea and order their comics. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So it might seem antagonistic now, but it really isn't, because, now that speculators are involved here, I mean, and I watched a number of YouTube videos, streamers last night, big time speculators, and they didn't have really much. They didn't say anything really negative about Bad Idea. They were just concerned about alienating retailers that aren't on board yet. So I really think that everybody wants Bad Idea to succeed, and they want them to expand. I certainly want it. I mean, I'm up here in Western Canada, and honestly, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone, even in Calgary, Alberta's got some Bad Ideas and comics. So I'm really hoping they expand, because I will definitely be on board for it. And so, I think this is going to be, I think this is going to be pretty positive all around, because the big thing is watching them expand, and because I think they're getting good press out of this so far. I mean, I don't think we're alone in this, because no speculator out there wants to be the speculator that's going to put down this type of, this type of initiative.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that Dinesh has personally told me he doesn't want to grow too big too fast. So that's part of it. They're a small team. They got to bring on what they can handle. You don't want to have an issue where you have to do an allocation again, because that looks bad. But it's also, Manny's talking about doing your homework, and as a fan, you got to do your homework. And yeah, if there's no Bad Idea store near you, there are, they don't do mail order either. I should have said that. You can't get it through DCBS or whatever, but there are certain shops like Collector's Paradise in Southern California where you can call the shop and order it. They'll hold the series for you until they have all the issues and send it to you, or you can arrange other shipping. So there are ways, even if there's not a shop around you, that you can contact a Bad Idea retailer, even if they're not in your local area, and still get a hold of it. But it requires you to do some work. You got to, everybody's so spoiled with on-demand streaming and whatever. And this is a little bit, the onus is on the fan or on the retailer to reach out to Adam Freeman at Bad Idea and say, hey, I do want to be a Bad Idea store. What is required, and it's not that simple to just say, I want to do it, because you got to agree to follow the rules. And I've talked about why those rules are in place and what they exist for. And it's to benefit retailers. So if a retailer says, well, now there's too many rules, and I've heard this, there's too many rules, I don't want to deal with that, I got enough to deal with. Hey man, these guys are trying to help you out. And if you're choosing not to put in a little bit of legwork to get that help and to have that, make that money, then that's on you. And if you think they're bad for doing that, I don't know what to tell you, because in order to get something, you got to give something, like, so many times in life. So there's that aspect of it too. And to Manny's point, to finally have the book in our hands. Yeah. From Jesse mentioned this earlier, because, the three of us know Dinesh, and we've known about Bad Idea for a long time, from, sitting at dinner and hearing about this as a concept years and years ago to finally having the book in our hand. Dinesh is, showing me pictures on his phone and whatnot. And it's like, man, to finally have it, congratulations to everybody over there, because they've put in a lot of hard work to make this happen. So what are your thoughts on the spec of this, Jesse? Because like you said, you're both a reader and a collector. You have, lots of slabs and that kind of thing. Do you think this is good for the spec market? Do you think Bad Idea will continue to be part of the spec portion of the comic book industry?
Absolutely. So you can see that already with the hero trade. You can see that already with the current raw prices on the aftermarket for ENIAC 1 first to print. To be honest, and also the ENIAC not the first print, which I did. It took me about 15 minutes of looking, and I was able to find it for cover price, obviously. But there's a lot of $30, $35, $40, $45 copies of the not first print, and I think that's insane. But boom, there it goes, right? Somebody's making money. One of the things, for example, that any collectible needs is scarcity. Scarcity and rarity. The two concepts are very big on that. If there's 8 million copies of something, like the death of Superman, well, guess what? You're not gonna send your kids to college on that very easily. Which is why retailers will have, incentive ratio variance and whatnot, like that. Bad Idea is not going to do that. So I can tell you, for me, I'm going to probably slab a first print of every single issue they've got, and I'll probably slab a second copy as well, so that I can flip it, because then that fuels my my other purchases, because I've got a fairly significant original art collection, and that stuff doesn't pay for itself. So I'm very excited for it. You're just going on YouTube, just going on Google, Facebook, and seeing places outside of the usual spots for spec talk and general buzz. It's active. There's buzz out there. There's people talking. There's people that normally might not have reviewed, say, for example, a Valiant book that are talking about this. So this is not exactly a it's not just a dead on arrival kind of event. This is the cool thing right now, and as long as we're following the rules, as long as the story and the quality is good, and which Dinesh has already stated that they're going to look at maybe 2 books a month, so it's very easy to have quality control with that. You can always put out a good product that way. I don't foresee this thing dropping. And then as you have the not first prints that keep coming and are available. So 3-4 months from now, a year from now, Johnny Joe can come along and still read the very first issue and say, oh, wow, I like this, and kind of get into it. And he's going to say, oh, let me go on eBay and see if I can't find the other issues. I'd like to collect this. So I see this as a very good thing. I'm still trying to hunt a hero trade one that's in a reasonable price range. And that's indicative of the market right now. Even though we're in, a COVID pandemic, there's guys out there that still have some change in their pocket and can throw some money around. So the game is still going.
Yeah, my shop unfortunately threw their hero trade away, so I wasn't able to procure it. They get that kind of stuff all the time, and the shop's owner, the wife partner, the wife half of the team that owns the shop, she just was cleaning the office and tossed it along with a bunch of other promo stuff. So, and not recently enough for me to go digging through the trash. I don't know that I would have at the time, because it was like the day that, we found out that it was from Bad Idea. So the prices weren't crazy yet. So even had I known, I was, would I have gone digging in the trash? Probably not. So
Jace, you would.
yeah, I know. But now, sure, for $4,000, you bet I'd be in there digging. But the other thing, I think you mentioned it, Manny, and Valiant. And I know, Rocky, you were a Valiant guy as well for a long time. And I think I give a lot of the credit for that. I mean, not just the tone of the story that Matt Kint was giving us, but when you have Doug Braithwaite's art, line work, facial expressions, action scenes, even the line weights themselves, combined with the colors of Diego Rodriguez, it brought me back to that golden age of Valiant, where it's just like, I've come home. I mean, it's just a beautiful book to look at in terms of art. And the other thing that none of us have mentioned so far is the production value of it. Not only is it a good book to look at in terms of art, and it's a great story, whatever, it's got a nice, heavy cover. It's got good paper stock. It feels like a really good product where you feel like, hey, I'm getting something for my $4. And we know that Bad Idea has come out and said, hey, the stories in terms of the length, these books are going to be as long as they need to be in order for the writer to tell the story they want to tell. It's not going to arbitrarily be 20 pages or 40 pages or whatever. So they say, okay, I have this story to tell. It's going to be over this many issues. It means each issue needs to be X amount of pages, and that's the way they'll do it. So just like they did when they were at Valiant and it was story first, it'll be the same thing at Bad Idea, story first. So I know for you, Rocky, that's got to be music to your ears.
Oh yeah, for sure. That very much so. And it's always frustrating when you never have any idea what necessarily when a title's going to end. But quite frankly, here, at least so far, I mean, these concepts are really good. I mean, when I go into the Bad Idea website and reading, these are good story ideas. And just, it's like I said, it's nice to have some hype around it. And like I said, it's sort of, it does harken back to if I can feel like a teenager again going into the comic book shop, fantastic. I mean, anything. I mean, to get me excited a little bit more, or maybe get, some incentive for a retailer to, get people into the comic shops a little more. This is the way to do it. I mean, like I said, it's really, really nice to see. And, it's just like it was commented earlier about how, there is money out there, despite the pandemic. People are, and for whatever reason, the collector's market is high. There's something about a lower economy at times. A poor economy often leads to an increase in the purchase of art sales and collectibles and antique sales to begin with, and comic books is no exception. And now's, to get in on the ground floor on something like this, it's kind of exciting. I'm definitely jealous of you guys. There's no question about that. But shame on me. I could have got in earlier had I been more diligent. So,
all right. Well, as we wind down here, I want to see what everybody's most excited about going forward. So Rocky several times has mentioned the other series. We have Tankers from writer Robert Venditti, Juan Jose Reap on art, Jordi Belair on colors. Basically, this idea of this Greenleaf Oil Company discovering there's not much oil left, and so they have access to a time machine, and they send machinery back, these tankers, that's where the name comes from, these guys in these sort of tank-like armor to kill more dinosaurs in specific locations so they know they can go and discover oil there. It's a really cool idea. So we've got that coming. We've got from Matt Kint with art by Adam Polina and colors by Matt Hollingsworth, this tale, Whalesville, which is a tale of this young boy who's thrown overboard and swallowed by a whale, and come to find out within the whale is a whole town that's been built by debris and driftwood and whatnot that the whale has swallowed over time, with all kinds of interesting characters. And then we've got coming from Marguerite Bennett with Renato Guedes on art and colors, The Lot, which is a horror story about a film lot in Los Angeles that is haunted, basically. So that'll be Marguerite Bennett doing horror. And then we've got also a one-shot called Sleigh Bells, which is kind of mixing Santa Claus and Rambo, as it were. That's just a one-shot, and that looks really interesting as well. So is it ENIAC two? Is it more ENIAC, or is it another one of these series? What's everybody looking forward to the most? We'll start with you, Jesse.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to Whalesville. I don't know why, but the ash can was a unique size and shape and whatnot. I'm interested in that. I like the way the story looks. I like the way I'm curious to see where it goes. Obviously, I'm going to be on board with ENIAC. I'm also looking forward to anything Louis Verosa puts his hands on down the road. I've seen a lot of his concept pages, and when that day comes, I'll be on board.
Yeah, that's the other thing. This is just wave one. There are more books coming, but it will be limited to 2 releases a month. We know we have Odin's Eye coming from Joshua Dysart that would be at the top of my list too. So, but we're just going to focus on the ones that have been announced with a release date so far. So, what about you, Manny? What are you most looking forward to next?
So it was really close between Whalesville and The Lot, but I'm gonna have to go with The Lot just because I'm such a fan of horror comic books, and especially one with Marguerite Bennett now. And so it's gonna be The Lot, and it's just what I'm into. But I'm so stoked to get a Christmas story in July also. I just have to mention that book's bananas. But my number one has to be The Lot.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, so Sleigh Bells is written by Zeb Wells, art by David LaFuente, and colors by Ulysses Areola. What about you, Rocky? Is there one that stands out more for you than another?
Well, I'm a sucker for a good time travel tale. Tanker sounds really good. And Robert Venditti, I guess, he's, it'd be nice to see, I love his Hawkman. I love his, he does a lot of good DC work. It'd be nice to see, he certainly did his at Valiant as well. He did a lot of work at Valiant. Tankers, the premise sounds so ridiculous. Dinosaurs, time travel. I mean, I'm in. Why not?
Yeah, that one kind of has me too. I mean, ENIAC #1 was so good. But if I had to choose, I'd probably go with Tankers just because Rob, I'm such a big fan of his. And I love Juan Jose Rip's art back from when I first discovered it on Clone. I'm glad I don't have to pick between Tankers and Odin's Eye from Joshua Dysart, but that's a later release. So yeah, I think Tankers has me really excited too. Plus, that promo video that Rob did where he was out at somebody's backyard in Georgia, riding in a tank and firing off a 50 caliber machine gun, and that was just a whole heck of a lot of fun, and just kind of very indicative of kind of the lighthearted, fun, over the top, crazy, bad ideas that these guys come up with. So I look forward to more work from them. So as we're winding up here, any final thoughts? We'll start with you, Jesse.
No, this is a golden time, man. We're coming we're coming into a bright future right now. 2020 was rough. 2021 started rough, but day in, day out, we start to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And, the ability to support local comic shops and new publishers and great stories like this, it wasn't just 6 to 8 months ago that we were terrified that maybe local comic shops would be dying. Maybe, comics we wouldn't see print anymore. Maybe it'd all be, on your phones or on your tablets. And so when you have the opportunity to jump on board with Bad Idea and read and collect these books and their products, you are conquering that fear that existed not very long ago and may still exist in the minds of some folks. So I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and this is part of it. I'm very excited.
What about you, Manny? Final thoughts?
Just simply do your homework. You now know what you missed out on if you did. I know what I missed out on, but I'll tell you one thing, I got every other Bad Idea book now on hold. And so it's done. And going forward, I'm going to make sure to keep up. And if you missed out, that's probably why. Because it wasn't, these books weren't just allocated for a day or two. These weren't, you had a lot of time to get your hands, to make sure you got your hands on a copy. So just make sure you do your homework and make sure you're supporting your local comic book shop. That is obviously a Bad Idea retailer, and enjoy it for what it is, because we know that some of the bigger publishers aren't necessarily telling such great stories right now. So it's good to have a publisher that is making it fun, making it interesting and entertaining for everyone, for readers, for speculators, for retailers. And, and I'm very interested to see in the future if they expand finally and what extra rules are going to put in, because Bad Idea is going to have the leverage as people are going to be asking for it. So good times.
Rocky, how about you?
Well, it's appropriate that we reviewed ENIAC #1 because it involves a computer that mankind foolishly, they opened up Pandora's box and they have no control over what happens once you open Pandora's box. Well, then once you ring that bell, it cannot be unrung, as it says in the comic book. And what Bad Idea has done, they've opened up a Pandora's box of bad ideas, which seem to be pretty damn good so far. So, hopefully we'll have a better fate than the citizens of the world of ENIAC.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like a lot of their ideas, a lot of their rules, I should say, while they may seem kind of arbitrary and this time around it caused an issue where things were allocated. I really do feel like these rules are for fans, and for retailers. So they're trying to get the book in the hands of as many individual fans as possible, rather than one person getting 50 copies or 5 copies or whatever. And to that end, hey, retailers, you can't sell it for more than cover price, 1 per person. And then to benefit the retailers, it's only available in comic shops. You're not going to be able to find the trade on Amazon or pick it up on Comixology. So it's to your benefit, retailers, to do your homework and reach out to Bad Idea and become a Bad Idea partner store, so you can have that added foot traffic on Wednesday. We know that foot traffic for a comic shop is the lifeblood of a local comic shop. So I echo a lot of what these guys are saying. Do your homework. Read the book. Like, even if you're picking up for spec, do yourself a favor and read the book, because these stories are fun. Comics are meant to be read in my mind, which is why I don't have a bunch of slabs. But we always say that everybody should collect the way they want to collect, and if you collect just for the collectability, then that's great. No problem with that at all. You spend your money as you will and do what makes you happy. So thanks to all my co-hosts for joining me. It's great to be taken over by Bad Idea. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Again, I'm going to blame the button for taking over and not having all his ducks in a row. So again, hoping next week, as Bad Idea once again takes over the Comic Source podcast, that we'll have Warren and or Dinesh on to talk about launch day from their perspective. Otherwise, we'll be back to talk about ENIAC issue 2. As well as Tankers #1, and we'll probably have some of the Bad Idea creators on at some point to let you know what to expect. So be sure you're joining us every Sunday for the Bad Idea takeover of the Comic Source podcast. So once again, I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.